John deliver the invitation, please?
Let's stand. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you again for this day of life. Thank you, Father, for this opportunity to gather here today in this committee meeting and do the work of the people that we're representing today, Father. I pray for those that are here with us, the visitors, and those that are on the staff. I thank you for the traveling grace you gave us to get here, and pray for the traveling grace going home. Father, I pray for the leaders of our country. I pray for the leaders of our tribe. Help us, Father, always to do good work for our people. Be with those that are standing in harm's way, those overseas, our military people, their families. And Father, for those that are bereaved and sick and ill and have problems and lost loved ones and all the things that's going on in the world, Father, you can comfort them as no one else can, and I pray you would. Go with us now. Forgive us, Father, where we fail. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Meredith Rayleigh.
Here.
Buell England. Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzer.
Here.
Julia Coates.
Here.
Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Don Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Hannah Glory Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell. Chris Soap.
Here.
David Thornton.
Here.
Kara Callan Watts.
Oh, honey,
We do have a quorum.
we have a quorum. This purpose of this meeting for the Rules Subcommittee on Election Law is to discuss and take action, in particular on the table items that follow the agenda. And we requested that the Election Commission be here today so that we could seek their input on these table items, including Attorney Cole. And with that, and Todd is on vacation. So with that, Mr. Cole, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the council. As I understand, the one issue that we have left in all of the dialogue that Todd and I have had and our commission's had with him and the input here is this issue about verifying an absentee ballot.
Yes, sir.
I pulled the Oklahoma statute to see what they provide, and they do provide for a notary on absentee ballots. Interestingly enough, though, it says the signatures should be notarized at no charge by a notary public. Of course, you know notary publics are certified by the state, licensed by the state, and governed by the state. So someone had mentioned the expense of having to go find a notary public and pay a fee. The state of Oklahoma requires notary publics to do this notarization at their own expense. And of course,
Excuse me, Madam Speaker. The problem is not the state of Oklahoma. It's
I know.
primarily California, where they charge a minimum of, I believe, $25
Okay.
minimum fee.
Well, I was just pulling you the statute here because if you know, as you know,
At this moment, Mr. Cole has the floor, and Mr. Baker is next, so continue, Mr. Cole.
okay, it is a felony, of course, to illegally vote by absentee ballot in the state of Oklahoma. And I think that the legislature felt like that they had to solemnize these affidavits by someone who was independent, being a notary public, rather than two witnesses to notarize or to witness it. So I think that's the thinking behind the Oklahoma statute, and how you and what you want to do to adopt as a way in your legislation, I think would be up to you. And I don't know how that would play with California or any other state. I would think there would be reciprocity for the Cherokee Nation as a sovereign, that the state of California or any other state would recognize the Cherokee Nation law that the notary public, of course, would have to notarize it without a pay. I'm not sure. I don't have any answer to that question, Mr. Baker.
Any more comments, Mr. Cole?
No, I just was handed a survey that you took. I don't know who took it, but it shows clearly that the majority of those that were surveyed prefer to have a notary public on these absentee ballots, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you all may have.
Mr. Baker was saying that he's yielded to Ms. Fishing Houghton to go before him.
Todd talked to me before he left, and you may look it up. I looked it on the web and brought it down and downloaded it. I ended up leaving it home. But California, the notary handbook that they give to notaries when you go, says the same thing. You got to do it for free. California, same way. That's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Baker?
If Mr. Baker wants to speak to what Jody just said,
He's yielding to you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and we had that before this discussion, and I'm familiar with the California handbook. The problem was the notaries would not recognize votes for the Cherokee Nation as voting for a government.
Okay. I had called out there and talked to the Secretary of State. Her office is how I ended up coming up with it, because I asked about the elections. I said, because there's so many other Indian tribes out there that hold elections. They said, no, they're required to do you all's too. She said, perhaps you need to get with us and write us a letter or send something out.
I finished.
Okay, Mr. Baker?
yeah, and the survey that Mr. Cole referred to was one that this council funded and sent out, and we received back 4,086 letters or surveys from voters across the nation. And of that, 2,723 or 66% said that they definitely wanted the notary to be on those. And I mean, if we're going to do these surveys, why aren't we going to listen to the people and listen to the?
Mr. Baker, may I interrupt just a
You
moment?
certainly can do
Mr.
anything
Cole,
you want to do.
Mr. Cole, you're welcome to have a seat. You don't have to stand there.
Thank you.
Unless someone wants him to stand.
That's all right, I'm interested in it.
And our election commission is sitting there saying that they would feel more comfortable, or that they, you know, it's important to them that they have the notaries to go by. The people say that they want the notary to go by the notary. And that being said, I'm going to make a motion that we add back in the notary to the 78.
I think so.
That we add it back and continue the way that everybody that's voted in the past has done it. They're used to doing it that way. The election commission says we need it that way. The people say we need it that way, and I think we ought to say that we want it that way.
That's just a point of clarification on this motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Hoskins.
Currently, the law is we have a notary. This proposal was that we strike it.
Okay.
Right. So you want to stay with.
I just saw the
Okay, I just want to, I'm actually asking, we want to stick with the current law, which
current law
says
the
you
way it
have
is
notary.
without any strikes from notary, yes.
I second it.
Move and second that we bring the notary requirement back into the code.
Or
that it's
if
there.
correct, that, yeah, it's not stricken the notary.
That it's not strict.
Yeah.
Okay. First, then, did I have a second? Okay, now, discussion, Ms. Count-Watts, and then Ms. Coates, and then Jody, did you have a question also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had a question for the Election Commission, and then I wanted to comment also on the motion. So, Ms. Calico, since you have the longest history with the Election Commission, I'm curious, has the Election Commission, that to your knowledge, ever tried to contact states such as California in order to work out some kind of agreement that our voters could be notarized for free? Has there been?
Not to a great extent. We have some tried to find tribal and Indian organizations in California and Texas.
Martha, you want to come forward? Bill John can't hear well.
Thank you. That couldn't hear well either.
Sorry.
Texas and California, we've tried to do that. Not to a great extent, to try to find people that would notarize our ballots free of charge, but not to a very great extent.
not on like a state, at the state level with the secretary or the election commission there to,
Not that I'm aware of.
so is there anything, and I think this may be back to the lawyer, I actually have two questions in because it led to another. So is there anything in the election law, to your knowledge, that precludes the election commission from reaching an agreement with other states and maybe sending a letter with the absentee ballot explaining the agreement that they could take to the notary, maybe in California, for example, saying this agreement's been reached, call this 1-800 number if you disagree, like, so they could take it to the notary that says, you have to provide this for free on my ballot.
I would think that you'd have to have it in your legislation here before we would be authorized to speak with any authority to another state or to another agency. We'd have no objections to doing that, but
That you feel like that you wouldn't, without written explicit passed legislation or an act, you wouldn't have the authority. Okay, so that answers kind of my question, what I needed. So I would say initially when I first got on council and went through the hands-on the election process, I was shocked at the barrier that this created for some voters out of state. There's two things I look at for barriers to voting, which I think we have to constitutionally protect our citizens from facing. One is if it's logistically too problematic, that if it's too difficult to find in this case, somebody to validate the ballot, then that is a problem, but it's not insurmountable. So I don't see that it's by itself precludes somebody from voting absentee. But the idea of a poll tax, that if they are forced to pay even 50 cents or $1 to have it notarized, is a problem, because I think we can't have poll taxes. And it essentially creates a poll tax for at-large voters. So at this point, if the things the research that's been shared proves out and it's valid that we could reach agreements with all the individual states and provide the voters hands-on logistics in their hand with their ballot, that we've got an agreement, say, with California, and when they take it to a notary public, they should provide that for free, and if not, call this secretary or the state or whoever it is. Then I would think we need to keep the notary to maintain the integrity of the election. But there should be an exception, because if we can't allow for free notary public in certain states, we've created a poll tax for some of our voters, and that's unacceptable. So I don't know, it's not an either or for me, and that's where I'm at with it. So I don't think we can, I don't think I'm going to be able to support the motion to keep it exactly as is, unless we provide for exceptions and make sure that people aren't having to pay to vote, essentially through a notary. Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Speaker.
Cole, did you want to make a comment on, in particular, her request for an exception?
sure. It crossed my mind that probably what we ought to do is explore, not only with California, but with every state in the Union, to see and set up reciprocity of the laws of the Cherokee Nation with others. And it may or may not have already been done. I know we are that way to our court systems and our laws here in Oklahoma. The Supreme Court of the state of Oklahoma recognizes and is reciprocal with the laws and the statutes of the Cherokee Nation. So that's something we might want to explore. I don't know if it has been in the past, but that's something the Commission could take on as a responsibility if you so desired.
Ms. Campbell,
Just one last thing, and this committee still has not addressed the idea that we've created barriers for those who are deployed overseas, because when my brother was in Iraq, in 2003, and he had to track down officers on whoever was, it was very problematic, and it was already delayed because of how long it took to get there, and he didn't even know if they'd come back in a timely manner. We still have never addressed that for those who are deployed overseas in our military and such. So, and this is part of that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'll address that. There are laws in the military that is recognized by the states, I know particularly the state of Oklahoma, that an officer can notarize in lieu of a notary public. So all he'd have to do
But
would
do
be,
we inform our voters of that?
well,
And we don't
I
have
don't know
those
that-
same laws because we're sovereign separate from the state of Oklahoma.
I don't know that you, even if you adopted the laws, that you could communicate that to every voter. I mean, lots of people just too apathetic about voting and to find out what the laws are. So it's going to be difficult to address all the problems of 100% of them.
Ms. Fishinghall.
I believe I was.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry. You go.
I basically was thinking along the same lines as Councilor Karen Watts, and it doesn't seem that if we did the legwork in advance to be in contact with all of the states, I would agree. It should be not just California, but all across the country. And get these in writing from the state attorney general or whoever we need to get it from. And likewise with the military, that it would not be burdensome, an undue burden at least, at the time when a person requests an absentee ballot, that a simple letter be placed in that ballot as it's sent back to them. Giving them the instructions. For the military, all you need is to go to an officer to get this notarized. Or for the various states, you could just put a list of the numbers that the notary should call for that particular state for instruction on this. This is no more than one page, probably would cover it with instruction about how this could be achieved for free. All that would need to be done would be the legwork in advance to be in contact with the state attorneys general. I know that the attorney general in California, or whoever it was that Councilor Fishinghawk spoke to, told them this, but in a state, what I know in reality on the ground occurs is that in a state with 30 million people, Indians really outside of casino gaming are not on the radar, on anyone's radar, certainly not like it is here in Oklahoma. The notaries don't know what the law is on this. They don't know about Indian tribes. They don't know. You know, so I think that I don't know how this would be handled, if it would be in a friendly amendment or what, but that the inclusion of a letter with instructions about how this can be notarized for free to be included within the ballot when it is sent out to people when they've requested it might be something to put into this code.
I think that's a policy request, what she's trying to do rather than make it law.
But I thought that the statement had just been made that it would have to be law on this part too.
No, about the letter.
What we could do is explore this issue and see what avenues are available to try to plug this problem. And of course, it's going to require us to communicate with all the states to find out what approach that we should make, whether it's asking for, and I would think that maybe if it hadn't already been done, that it probably should be considered by the executive branch and the judicial branch that all of the laws of the Cherokee Nation, as well as all of the sovereign Native American institutions, ought to be given reciprocity by all the states. And I don't know if that's never been addressed or not, but certainly that ought to be the case. We have different kinds of documents between nations and allowing reciprocity on issues, that there's no reason why that shouldn't be the case here with the Cherokee Nation.
Ms. Fisher-Hall.
If I still have the floor, can I follow up with this? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing, if it is legal to put a letter of some sort in with the ballot, one other thing that might be put on there is just to simply let people know that many banks will notarize something for free for their customers. A lot of people don't know that.
Used car dealers.
Right, and just
real estate brokers.
Having to get that word out sort of by word of mouth is difficult, but if we can put something in the ballot itself, that would, is there anything that would legally preclude us from doing that?
Well, we might want to address that in the affidavit itself. that's on the ballot,
Right.
as opposed to having a separate document. So we might address that and maybe get back with you. I haven't looked at that affidavit that we do. I've looked at them, in the state of Oklahoma, but we might look at that and see if we can redraft that and get back with you and see if that might be a solution, to at least have in that affidavit some kind of a suggestion or option for them to do it.
Ms. Fishing Hawk, now you can talk.
Lord, I want to address that. Do you think it's right to put something at all in with the ballot, or do you think it ought to be mailed completely separate?
I think it should be on the affidavit if we're going to give any instructions rather than a separate document.
How much trouble do you think putting some exceptions in the law is going to be
I don't know.
come protest time?
I haven't had a chance to reflect on that with just the issue, but I'll be happy to get back with you after I take a look at our ballot, or our affidavit, and see what the constraints are. If you remember, it's small print anyway, and it's not much space on there to start putting a lot of exceptions on.
Okay.
But I'll look at it, and I can speak with your counsel, Todd, on it, see what his reflection is.
I mean, you're kind of bordering the line when you put something in with the ballot regardless. You've been in many elections, I have too, I feel safe saying that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. I mean, it's going to take an effort to vote, people. Come on. Look at the voter turnout. It is going to, some people have to put forth an effort to vote. In the same token, I don't mean this bad, but if my people don't want a notary, by the same token, I'm sitting here saying, why should I cater to an out-of-state voter when 67% of our people told us they want a notary? And I don't know any other way to put that, Jack. I ain't being hateful, it's just how I feel.
Well,
And I was kind of liking her idea of working with our at-large groups to provide notaries, if that was at all.
Certainly, we would have no opposition to that.
And I know.
But the reality is, of the 100% of voters who are out there, hardly more than 30 or 40% of them ever go to the poll in the first place. So you just got apathy among voters. It's just the way of life.
Oh, I'd make a fortune if I could find out how to get people to
Sure,
vote.
exactly.
You know?
Every candidate would do the same thing.
And we do have a right, I agree, we need to constantly protect our citizens' right to vote and not have no barriers, but we also have a constitutional right to protect them from fraud. And still, if somebody was to ask for my ballot, and then they vote it, and I show up on polling day and say I want to vote, I can vote a provisional ballot, but if I'm right, or at least it is in state laws, absentees are the first ones to get run through the counting machines at 7 o'clock, so chances are whoever voted my ballot's already going to get counted, and my provisional ballot is not going to get counted. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and a poll tax, if I remember right, is where you pay for the right to register to vote. Was it not in the old days? It wasn't when you voted, it was the right to register.
You earned that, you performed a service in order to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hopkins?
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we need to keep the notary, but I think we do have to be mindful of, you can call it a poll tax, but any sort of barrier to voting. I mean, if we weren't in the Cherokee Nation jurisdiction, we'd be talking about, is this constitutionally suspect, in terms of, but I think we can resolve it, and I'd resolve it. Number one, has been suggested something on the boilerplate on the notice, and then I would offer this friendly amendment, a new paragraph to this section, which would say the Election Commission is authorized and directed to reach agreements with the appropriate jurisdictions to ensure, to the greatest extent possible, free notarization of ballots. And I think that would give you the legal authority you need to do that.
We can do that, and we can get back with you after we've had an opportunity
Yes, I would accept that.
to explore that.
And I'd yield for a question to...
Before you accept it, does it need to explicitly say without waiving any sovereign immunity or something to that effect? I mean, I'm not the lawyer, but I'm
No,
just
you
asking.
wouldn't be waiving sovereignty. You're asking for reciprocity.
I think if we needed to err on the side of great caution, we could add that language. I think I agree with Mr. Cole that we wouldn't be waiving it, but in our business, I don't think we like to be careless with that.
Exactly right.
I think Mr. Henry could help guide him on that particular
I'll consult with him before we...
requirement.
I mean, if he's accepting the friendly amendment, that could include appropriate sovereign immunity language. He accepts.
You accept that?
I do.
Who's second? And Jody, you accept? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, Mr. Cobb, you act like you're disgusted back there. Was there something you
I
wanted
was
to
not
do?
discussed. I have the contact information for the state of California and the state of Texas, the Notary Public section, the Secretary of State, and there's phone numbers right there.
Okay?
You're Bishop. Mr. Soap?
Just to recap, for my clarification, the state law in Oklahoma requires a notary public on an absentee ballot with no charge.
Right.
And then California, I wasn't sure if we were clear on that, but in their elections, do they require a notary public?
I haven't researched that. Mr. Baker says so. I'll know before the day is over.
Okay, so everyone requires a notary public, and then and there's no charge.
I can do a little research and find out how many states have the same law.
There's just a little bit of confusion. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Crittenden?
I'm just going to say, thank you, Madam Chair, that, of course, I don't go out there to those groups. I could. But if I was having a problem with some information and say in my area, and it's small compared to that, California and Texas, but I might make a copy of the page of whatever notary book, whether it's Texas or California, whatever it was, that said it was supposed to be provided free. I might take some of that stuff with me to my community get-togethers when I'm out there and just hand it out, or do a mail out to them. That way, they would know, those folks would know. That ought to help a little bit with the confusion. And I do believe we need to keep the notary. Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Count-Watts?
I know I've already been addressed because that was what I was.
Okay, thank you. Jordan?
I call for the question.
Question's been called. It's already been voted on. They were just making comments.
No, we haven't voted on, I'm calling for the question on the.
Oh, okay. To leave it as it is with the amendment that is included?
Leave everything as is with the amendment. That's the question I'm calling for.
Clarification. I thought that he accepted my friendly, and then you somebody called the question, and we voted to accept
And
it.
I allowed comments, but I should not have done, but I did because the vote was already taken.
And now I'm calling for the overall question.
It's already been
About the
voted.
whole election.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and that's what confused you, is because I allowed further
Okay.
discussion. Sorry about that.
I thought you just voted on that.
My fault. Any other comments? It was good discussion.
Just one point of clarification though.
Sure.
Before we, this finishes the election law? This is the last thing, isn't it?
No, we're working on these tabled items.
Okay.
These that are included in your book. But Mr. Cole was kind enough to be here today, so that's why I let him go ahead and go forward with that absentee. Mr. Cole, was there any other comments you had in regard to these other tabled items?
No, Mr. Todd, Henry and I have been on the same page, as well as the commission. This is the one issue that was yet to be resolved. And I think everything else has been resolved, and he has in his hands to submit to you, if he hasn't already done so.
We have these tabled items. Did you receive a copy of them?
We did,
Okay.
and we went over them with him.
Okay.
We were all on the same page with Todd, with the exception of this issue, is my understanding.
Chuck, did he make any comments to you in regard to that? He didn't to me.
He didn't to me. Our conversation was limited to just a couple of items, so I guess for the purpose of this first item on our tabled items, I was going to ask for Mr. Cole's input, but it sounds like he's already given it, which is that he agrees with what has been written here, with the exception of the notary.
On the standard or burden of proof, did you discuss that with Mr. Hembry? On Section 102, conduct of appeal hearing, Section C, burden of proof, have you discussed that with him?
Yes,
Were you of the opinion that it should be preponderance or clear and convincing evidence?
It should be preponderance.
You feel like it should be different?
I think clear and convincing is a stronger need of proof, and I don't think that That's going to create a bigger burden to try to substantiate the issue. So I think a preponderance.
Pass it.
I withdraw.
Ms. Corey Jordan?
I'm just wondering, Lloyd, did you check on the state level as to what the burden of proof is?
No, I did not.
And would you just enlighten this group as to the different levels of burden of proof?
Right. The preponderance is that by the weight of the evidence, you're persuaded. Clear and convincing is a step above that. It's kind of like the difference in the criminal case, beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to a fair preponderance of the evidence. So it's a higher level, and it seems to me that to distinguish between the two is going to be asking whoever is the judge or the reviewing body. They're not going to appreciate the distinction between clear and convincing as you would by fair preponderance. I just think that a fair preponderance would meet the burden that you need in order to resolve the issue.
Thank you. Mr. Baker?
Move to pass as with the preponderance of the evidence as written.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries that we use the standard of preponderance. Also, we were tabled campaign contributions in regard to in money or services or on behalf of a ballot measure. Did you discuss that with him?
We looked that over, and it looked satisfactory to us.
Okay, so you accept it as written. Any, I entertain a motion. Entertain a motion and a second in order to open discussion.
Just a point of clarification, if we pass it, what we're saying is that not only for the elections that we might be involved in, if there is a ballot measure, those people are held to the same standard. They have to report money or services that were given to them to...
That's my understanding of it.
Okay. Make a motion to pass that.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion? Dr. Cobb?
Just be clear on, I don't want any ambiguity here. Define services. Campaign contribution means a contribution in money or services to a candidate. Define services.
Let me look out mine out. Let me take a look at it right here.
Martha, perhaps you can speak to that since you've been there for a while.
Well, services is normally, you're running for office and we're going to let you have our building for free. That's services. That's something that would cost you. We're having a bean dinner. I'm providing all the beans. That's services.
Okay. Dr. Cobb?
Where I'm going with this is twofold. One is my colleague from Washington County, we were called in front of the Election Commission. There was a bank building in Collinsville that was a public building. Anybody could have used it free of charge. Anyone. And we used that bank building as anybody in the state of Oklahoma could have used, and we were called in on that. So I just want to be clear on that you stated that a fee would have been waived. In that case, there was no fee waived. It was, anybody could have said, can we use your building? And they'd have said yes. So that falls into that. So what about, and where else I'm going with this is services. What about hog fries and, what about,
I think you've got a good point.
People that, somebody could come up and say, well, look, last time we had an event, these people charged me X amount of dollars. Show me where you paid them. And if you said, well, they did it for free, I mean, where does that? I just want to be clear. I'm not saying I want to get rid of hog fries, but I want to be clear on what is defined as services.
You want to come forward, Ms. Morton?
I wanted to ask if that was the case with the bank that provided the meeting we had when we moved to the large arena, and we had complaints about written material and all that. Another candidate had used the written material with the name of the bank and someone's cooker and all that. Is that what you're referring to? We had quite a discussion about that, and I think, if I remember correctly, the commission decided at that time we should caution people if they are going to accept anything of that sort, that they should not put it on a printed, if it's free to everyone. And it appeared that that bank was financing this event. And actually, it probably was not, but the opinion of our lawyer at that time and the whole commission, that that was probably something you shouldn't be doing. And after lots of, I don't know if any of you were there, but I remember it vividly that we had quite a discussion about that. So our point at that time was, don't take these things and then put the sponsor and all, but if it is free to everyone, or if someone says you can use the school grounds to have a meeting or something. I'm just remembering that event.
If I still have the floor just for a second, that's where I'm going with this, is that
I thought so.
we made sure that it was something that was provided free of charge to anybody. And what we ran into is we were trying to be courteous and thank the people that they do this for everybody free of charge. It doesn't matter. They do it for rodeos. They do it for everybody. And what we ran into is we were simply thanking them for doing what they do to lots of people. So that's where I'm going with services. I just want to make sure services is defined as, if they charge somebody else and they don't charge you, then that is a problem. So that's where I'm going with
If I remember correctly, the charge was brought either by someone else who was campaigning, and they didn't get the same services, so the persons that came to that meeting were complaining about that event and about them breaking the rules. And back at that time, probably we had two lawyers, and then we had hired a lawyer. It was use a little common sense on that type thing and make sure you just keep it correct and not open yourself up for all of those complaints that came to us about what people were doing in our meetings. I thought it worked out quite well at the end, because I think we used common sense in dealing with it. Does that help you?
Yeah, but ultimately my question is, services is defined as if they normally charge something, irregardless of what we're dealing with, if they normally charge and they waive that fee for you, that's where it runs into a problem. That's where I'm going with services.
So maybe you need to define that if there is a.
That's just where I just don't want anybody to run into a problem and something as simple as somebody came up and said, well, last time I had a hog fry, they charged us this much money. I'd like to see where these people that did your hog fry, I'd like to know where you paid them.
So Dr. Bob, are you requesting that we include the definition of services?
Correct. I want to define what services is, because I just think it makes it easier for y'all too, so you don't have to. Yeah. Exactly.
So would you work with Mr. Hembry in defining services that we can include in the election code under definitions?
I will. I just crossed my mind. Let's say I have a private airplane and I want to fly the candidate over the district here and there. I think that's a substantial contribution to that politician, to that official, so I think that ought to be covered. But take the banks or the community center and Stillwell, who lets you use it at no charge. So I think it's a good idea that, and this is in definitions anyway that we're talking about, you've got campaign contributions, included services. Now you need to identify what services are by definition.
I think that's what you're looking for.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I think it's a good point.
All right, thank you.
There are several candidates who have friends who have motorhomes that run them all over the district, or free of charge and no charge to them. And that ought to be considered as a contribution to that official who's running.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Soap? Mr. Hoskins?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'll bounce this off Mr. Cole, but as I read this, if I received a bunch of plywood from somebody, goods, then I haven't received a service. I guess I've received a contribution. This is one of the situations where the more we add, the more confining I think we are, because contribution could be broadly confined. So as long as we're going to delineate things, it seems to me that goods ought to be involved, because often in campaigns someone gives you some stuff, it's not a service, and then you use that raw material to create something of value to your campaign. So in working with Mr. Hembry on defining services, it's something that embraces that. Goods.
We've both been in enough elections. I think we can conceive how many different ways you can contribute to a candidate. But
I don't doubt that. I just want to make sure we don't limit ourselves by trying to expand the language of this provision.
Gotcha. We'll work on it and submit it back to you. Okay?
Thank you. Mr. Thornton?
I'm just wondering about also on the services line, if someone gives you a vehicle to use during the campaign, that vehicle would be a contribution for that amount of time, wouldn't it?
It would be, if I were defining the services from this statute, I would include that.
You would have to turn that in.
That's what I would think.
What I'm wondering is, if someone give me a vehicle to use during that period of time, and I give them $10, would I be paying for those services and turn it in as paying for services for a vehicle?
You would.
And
the issue would be whether that was a sham or whether it was a genuine cost in return for the service. In other words,
it would depend on how much you give them.
How much you gave them and what kind of a return you got on that investment. In other words, if you Cadillac Escalade, $10 and you drive it 5,000 or 6,000 miles in your campaign, I think that would be about a killer.
Okay, I understand what you're talking about. Thank you.
Ms. Calmont?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I foresee a lot of issues with this, and if you review my campaign reports, I believe you will find I'm one of the more detail-oriented and document probably more than what is expected, what I believe was the intent of the law. So in this is no way am I advocating that I need to get out of additional work. But that Councilman Thornton's comments led me to the thought of, so if my mother, who is one of my constituents, drives me to a campaign event in her personal private car, do I have to reimburse her for that mileage, or do I need to log that mileage as in kind? And at what rate? Do we use the federal rate, or do we use, I'm serious. So we're at what point do we become, what lines are we developing that we might potentially have to cross? So I think we need a lot more dialogue and details before this vote is finalized. I'm going to advocate and move that we table this until these definitions are put in writing in front of us.
Well, if you have an opportunity to look at the election laws that the state of Oklahoma have adopted, you'll find there's an awful lot of gray matter in the statutes, and it's for these very same reasons, is that ad infinitum, you can just carry one thing and carry one thing, and so it's going to be difficult for you all to be able to come up with a statute that's definitive, that covers every issue and leaves nothing for doubt. You're not going to be able to do that.
So along with Mr. Hoskins' comment, I think he probably wants a little broader. Mr. Baker came up with anything of value. Is that what you?
Yeah, or anything of value over $50 or something. But let me also go. Would your mother charge you to drive you to Oklahoma City on a non-campaign thing? No.
Yeah.
Common sense. Yeah.
Mr. Baker, Jack Baker.
Oh, well, there was a motion to table.
That is an ambiguous term.
Before we make a motion to table, there is some discussion, a couple more that wanted to discuss this.
Okay. Well, my question is going to be on volunteers. Do you have someone who's addressing envelopes or whatever? is that considered services? Or any volunteers that helps with any event?
Point of order, Madam Chair. We had a motion to table.
I know, I said I'm holding off.
Oh, okay, I didn't.
On the chair. Mr. Baker?
No, I mean, we could get it really ridiculous because you have volunteers that show up to a hog fry and help with it, and you have no earthly idea where they've come from, you have no earthly idea, what they've spent. You have campaign signs at the headquarters, and you don't even know the folks that come in and get signs to go put them up for you. So, I mean, you're going to get to the point that you're going to restrict it so much that you couldn't be legal if you wanted to. And so you got to really be careful about narrowing it down too much, because it brings me to the thought of a fellow ran against Mike Sider one time, and he can't remember his name, wished I could, but he showed up at a campaign speaking, and he looked on the back of the truck and there was a bumper sticker with his name on it. And he knocked on the guy's door and said, "Where could I get one of those?" He didn't know who put it out, didn't know where it came from. He didn't have bumper stickers, and he kind of wanted one for his own truck. But I'm just saying, you got to really be careful, because there could be stuff out there that you as a candidate would have no earthly idea, and just because the sign propped up someplace and you knew nothing about it whatsoever, you'd be responsible for it.
Very good discussion. We have a motion to table. Did we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That was a very good discussion. We got more to consider, but it's time to adjourn, so do we have any announcements? Entertain motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Thank you. We'll get back with you.
Thank you, Mr. Election Commission, for being here.